Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, great. All right, so my name is Kasper Larsen, and I'm your professor in this course. I am completely new to Zoom, so it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. The way I'm going to run it is using a document camera. So the first order of business is going to be to try to switch to the document camera. All right, so this seems to work. If you can't see something on the screen, you just interrupt and I'll try to make it work. All right, so this here is MF1 or MS MF. Right, so my name is Kasper. Larsen, and I'm in the math department. You can reach me at my login is kl75/6@math.rutgers.edu. So if you need to reach me, you can reach me on that email. We will meet each other on Tuesday mornings. This is where we'll have the lecture. And then there'll be a Thursday mornings. There'll be office hours. There'll be a session on Wednesday morning. This will be given by Shao, my PhD student, and this will be a problem session. He will also have office hours, and I think so. Homework. So you do Friday nights, and I think Shao. He has office hours Friday in the morning. The computer keeps saying these ping noises. I'm guessing this is when people sign on, so I need to figure out how to turn that off. I'll do that for next time. I should say here, with the Tuesday morning lectures, there's a little trick. There'll be, I'm split it into two. There'll be the first run will be from 8:30 until 10, and then we'll probably stop a little bit before so we can have a little break. And then the second run will be from 10 to 11:30. And there are different Zoom links. And the reason that there are different Zoom links is because these lectures, they're recorded. And so, and there's a limit to how big recordings Canvas and Zoom and so on will handle, and 3 hours is too much. So I split them into two different Zoom links. What it means is that when we will take a break at sometime before 10, I'll close this link down, and then I'll start up the other link. So these ones here, they're going to be there'll be two links for Tuesday mornings, and there'll just be one link for all the other ones. So recording, so lectures are recorded. And posted on Canvas. And this also includes, so with the lectures here, you're going to see me write these document slides here. So this is including these document slides. So as you have questions, just by all means feel free to interrupt and ask for clarification. We're going to go through here in the first part of this morning's lecture. We're going to go through all these practicalities that control how the course, or outlines how the course is going to get run. Okay, so far we have, this is more or less our menu. On Sakai, no, not on Sakai, that's the old system. The new system, the Canvas. So on Canvas, you'll also find the syllabus and all the other things, and all other documents. And so the syllabus is like a list of rules for the course. What we're going to be talking about, how we're going to be talking about it, your homeworks, what I expect of you when you hand in your homeworks, the exams, and so on. So if you haven't looked at the syllabus, give it a read. This is a document that we'll come back to as the course goes on. And the last pages of the syllabus is where you'll find the schedule. Okay, so something about the schedule. Let me get the books. Which I don't have here anymore. There are two books that are. So there are two books. There's the binomial model. This is stochastic calc by Steve Shreve. Then there's the continuous time. And this is again stochastic calc by Steve. So these two books, this one here, the first one is that's the thin one, and continuous time, the second edition. This is stochastic calc 1, this is stochastic calc 2. This is a much thicker book. And so the goal of our course, MF1, is to talk about the first book. I have a few extra chapters that were written after he printed the first binomial textbook. And depending on how far along we get, some years we will get to these extra chapters, and some years we will not get to these extra chapters. The goal is to go through the entire first textbook by Steve. And then for the continuous time, so the continuous time textbooks, the second volume of this series, this is what will happen in your next course, 622. And because I know that this is going to come in your next class in the spring, we will go through some pieces in this second textbook already in our course. So even though this is not strictly speaking necessary to do it in our course, there are other ways to get around it. There are some mathematical objects that you will need in continuous time. And so instead of doing a hack job in our course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the bits and pieces from continuous time already in our course that I know that we'll need in our course and that you'll also need again in the second course. So what I'm saying here is that you need to get your hands on these two volumes, because even though we will use the first textbook the most, the second textbook we will use bits and pieces from it throughout the course. Okay. So that was. So what's in these textbooks? Well, so our schedule, and let me just see if I can get this thing shared. Let me just show you how the let me see how I can get this thing to work. So let me just show you how it should look like. Go to the syllabus. So I'm hoping you can see my syllabus now. So this is how the syllabus looks like. Here are the two textbooks that I have been talking about. So number 1 and number 2. Sometimes there are students that would like other textbooks, and so I put a few other textbooks in here. I should say that these two textbooks that are listed here, the ones by Steve Shreve, these are the textbooks that you will find in quantitative finance programs across the US. Steve, he wrote them in the early 2000s, and they've been used at Carnegie Mellon since the mid-90s. And then they got published in the early 2000s, and they become standard references for quant finance ever since. So these are the main textbooks. Steve Shreve, he has been, for those of you that know the Carnegie Mellon program, so he developed this program in the 90s, and he's been teaching stochastic calculus for quant finance ever since. So okay, so there's one student who's saying that I can neither hear or see anything. Is this in general true? Can nobody see or hear?
Prof, this is Kashyap. I can see and hear as well.
That is not in general. So I would, for those students that can't see or hear, try to reboot and see if that helps. Okay, so what I'm saying here about Steve's two textbooks is that these are the main references. So the reason that I'm using them in this course is because this is what is being used in basically all other programs across the US of this sort. So these are the main references, and this is why we're using them as well. Let me flip down here to the schedule, because this is what's going to change or develop as we move along. Right, so we're currently sitting up here in week 1, and so we're going to start out. Well, we're doing the introduction now, and then we're going to start out with the one-period model. And so this is the way that it's written. So there's Shreve 1, this is the thin book, and then there's Shreve 2. So you can see down here next week, I'm hoping to get to talk a little bit about some of the pieces in the second textbook. And you can see when the homeworks are due and what sections to look at. And sometimes I'll put notes in if there's a particular example I want you to pay attention to. So there's an example here. So when you see stuff like this highlighted, this is because I think that particular aspect of the theory or that particular example, this is something that deserves special attention. So I put it up here for the first 6 weeks, and yeah, this is gonna involve the homework. So let me say a little bit about this. So let me switch back to the document camera, and then say a little bit more about the homework. And so here in the schedule, so this is check the last pages in the syllabus. So about the homework, 2 books, schedule, check the last syllabus, and then something about the homework. So the next one, first homework is due next week. So in, what would it be, 12 days, and then every Friday. So here in the beginning, the homeworks will be, at least here in the beginning, there will be problems on analysis and probability too. So as we get more and more into the theory, then the homework is going to change character, and we will start having more and more problems related to the material. But here in the beginning, there will be background problems and analysis as well as probability, and this is of course because we're going to be using these tools. In particular, probability, we'll be using it quite a bit. Okay, so you'll do online, and the grading, the way that the homework is going to be graded are a little bit different, perhaps, than what what you're used to. So over the years, I've tried different ways of having homework graded, and some years ago, I settled on the following. So accepted homework counts for. So one accepted homework counts for 3%. And so what does it mean to be accepted? Well, it means that there are only, there are no or only minor errors. Right, so what's going to happen is that the grader, the TA, is going to look through your homeworks, and he's going to tell you what he sees. And if there are only minor problems in there, he's going to accept the homework. So if there are bigger problems, bigger errors, they need to be corrected. And handed in again. So this is just together with the next homework. With the following homework. So, and then in the next round, hopefully these errors that you had, they can be, if you had some and you would the TA would mark those problems that would have to be handed in again. You hand them in again, and then the homework can get accepted. So if it keeps going like this, at some point the grader is going to say this is enough, and I'm not going to accept your homework. But you can have 2 tries. So you can have 2 tries to get the homework accepted. So it's a little bit different than what you might have been used to, in the sense that other professors degrade the homework and you get like a percentage. So if you had like 1 mistake, you will deduct, I don't know, 10% of your homework, and then you get 90% on your homework instead of 100. And what ends up happening there that I don't like is that it becomes this race to get like 95% and 96%, and ooh, I had a mistake and it's going to count something. I don't like that at all. So here it's more like big picture things. So I want to see that you can actually do these problems, and then not be bothered by whether you have a 2 instead of a half, or something like that. In the end,
Prof, I have a question.
yeah,
So, do we have to finish both the tries within that designated timeline, or
yes,
like, okay,
yeah. So the problem with this way of doing grading is that for everybody to get through, it takes a while to get the homework sets finished, right? So people will hand in their homework not this Friday, but the next Friday. That's homework 1. We are 20 some students in here, so my guess is like 4 or 5 students will have to hand in some problems again, and then they have to get regraded, and so it'll be a while before the first round of homework is done. And
okay,
so I'll post solutions to these homeworks, but only after everything has been graded, so everybody gets a chance of getting it accepted.
thank you.
So we have 10 sets. There are 10 sets. So you can see 10 times 3, this is going to give us 30% of your grade. And I mean, it does happen that sometimes there are students that do not hand in homework. Okay, so there's not much I can do about that. But most students, at least this has been the experience in the last years that I've been doing this, most students end up getting everything accepted. It might take a bit of sweat and tears, but the benefit of doing it this way is that students pay attention when they don't get it accepted. And that means that you're going to come and reach out to me and the TA to get help on correcting these errors. And this is really what homework, this is a huge benefit of homework. Like, you get feedback, and that feedback will prevent you or help you not to make the same mistake again. And this is the main purpose of this is the main purpose of this way of doing homework. That I can get the students' attention, because if you get 95% on your homework, most students are really not going to work through all the comments that are there. There might not even be any comments in the homework. This way here, I get the students' attention. Okay. I should also say here with these homeworks, lots of them are repeats from previous years. So do not get your hands on these old solutions and just copy them. This is absolutely not the way to learn this material. This material here has a tendency to get away from students. At least this has been my experience, that this material can get away from you. And so you have to stay on top of it. And to stay on top of it, you need to spend time on getting stuck on these homework problems and come seek help. This is why we have these office hours for you guys to reach out and ask questions. I'm going to try, because everything here is now going to be online, I'm going to try to do more problems during the lectures. Because otherwise it's just going to be too boring to sit here and look at me going through the theory. So I'm going to try to do more problems. I have had a lot of discussions about these. Some professors, they like to use breakout rooms, and some professors do not like to use breakout rooms. And I'm very torn about whether or not this is a good idea or this is not a good idea. So at least here in the beginning, the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to put a problem up, and then give you guys a few minutes to think about it, and then we will start solving it. I'm not going to be using breakout rooms in the beginning because there are some students that really like it, but there are also students that really don't like it. They do not like to be put in this situation. So I'm personally torn about it. It's not clear to me if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So being risk averse, I'm not using this for the time being. This is of course something that can change if there are lots of students that want to do it. In that regard, I don't know if you guys have given your information to your fellow students so you can correspond with each other. If some of you, I cannot just share your information without you telling me that you want your information to be shared. But one thing I can do is I can create an announcement out on Canvas for people that are seeking other people's contact information. So if you want to have your name listed out there with your email address so people can contact you to reach out to fellow students to build up a group of students to work with, by all means send me an email saying, can you please post my information on the Canvas site? And there'll just be an announcement saying that the following students are looking for fellow students to collaborate with. So if you're interested in stuff like that, just send me an email and I'm happy to share that on Canvas. This way people can contact you, or if you so desire. Right? So if you're looking for collaborators, send me an email, and I'll post your info on Canvas. Right, so if you're looking for collaborators, send me an email and I'll post your information on Canvas. I know some of you have been in the boot camp with Professor Pham, and maybe already there you have built up connections. So I should say, getting through a program like the one that we have here at Rutgers, it is very, very difficult to do this on your own. You will have to build up a group of students that you can work with. I strongly encourage you to reach out and use office hours. I know for some students it's quite uncomfortable to speak up and get out there and ask for help. But these office hours, this is really what they are meant for. These office hours are meant for you to come and ask questions about what's going on in class, what's going on in the homework, what is in the material, and then there will be a discussion. I mean, normally these discussions would happen in my office, and that's why they call office hours, and then people will be working up on their whiteboard, and I'll sit and try to provide feedback in real time to what they're doing. It's a long process, but it really does work. Over time, you will be able to improve and get some of these problems that there might be in your background, try to get them fixed, and try not to let this material that we're going to go through get away from you. Okay, so this was about the homework. So as you can see, that leaves 70% of your grade. So let me talk about the last 70%. So let me start by saying first so the remaining in all the other years that I've taught this, the remaining 70%, the way that this has been dealt with has been to give out in-class written tests. And so instead of having class, we would have an exam. So there'll be an exam midway, and then there'll be exams at the end of the course. And this is just not possible with this Zoom anymore. There are, in the math department, there has been a lot of meetings and discussions about how one should examine students. And there are all kind of problems related to this, involving authentication. Like, how do we make sure that the students that are taking the exams are actually the ones that are supposed to take the exam? How do we proctor online exams? Do we give the students 3 hours? Students are scattered outside the US. What about time? If you put a 3-hour time frame, for some of you, this is late at night. For me, this is early in the morning, and there might be students. Yeah. So just spreading it out, this is difficult. Giving the students 24 hours, that seems to be unanimously a bad idea. So I opted for something completely different. And I understand that this is foreign and this is new to probably most of you. But this is the only way that I can see being absolutely sure that the student is the one that the student says he or she is when taking the exam. And also, I will be able to see that there is no chance of getting around the system. So we're going to do all exams in this course. There'll be 2 exams. And you'll be all. So what that means is we're going to use Zoom to do it. So there'll be a number of slots where you can sign up. The exam is going to be about each exam is about 20 minutes. So what we'll do is I'll make public a list of slots. So I think I'll do them in batches of like 2 to 3 hours. So this will be 5-7 students in a batch. So we'll probably have 3-4 batches for a class of this size. Then there will be, so we'll use Zoom's, whiteboard. Or if you have a document camera or a tablet or something else. So if nothing else, Zoom has a whiteboard. Let me just show you how it looks like. I just think to work. Right, so this is the whiteboard. So if nothing else, students will be able to write on this, and then I'll be able to see what the students write. If you have a document camera, if you have a phone, you can turn the phone into a document camera. You'll be able to make a stand just like the one that I'm using here, and that'll be perfectly fine too. So these exams, they're gonna be one-on-one, right? So it'll only be. So let me switch back here so you can see what I'm actually writing. Yeah, so it'll only be me and 1 student on Zoom at a time. Right, so they're gonna get recorded, but not posted. So what I see is have this number of students in a batch. There'll be, I'll take them in the order that has been signed up for, and we'll go through 1 student at a time, and it'll only be that 1 student and me, and there'll be a discussion for 20 minutes. And then after that, I'll do the rest of the batch of students, and then I'll assign grades. So there'll be 2 oral exams. You'll each count for half. And then you might ask yourself, so what on earth are we going to be talking about in these oral exams? Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is see the problem sets on Canvas. And so let me just show you these problem sets on Canvas. So if you go to Canvas, you should find 2 files. And here's the first one. So they're called MF1 midterm problems. So here there are a number of old problems that I have used either for midterm exams or for final exams. And there are, well, 17 pages, and you can flip through it. There are 20 problems or so, and I also posted the solutions. So what I see happening in these oral exams is that we start, right? So we have 20 minutes. So the first part of your oral exam is going to be me choosing one of these problems and then have you talk about it, right? So you will come into this first exam and I'll bring up problem whatever. Here's problem number 4. Tell me about problem number 4. And then you will go for a while, and then depending on how it goes, I will either ask you another problem, or I'll ask you details about some of these things that you have talked about. And so we'll do that for 20 minutes. And then the next student will come in and we'll do the same thing. And then after having taken a batch of students of, I don't know, 5, 7, 8 students, I'll assign grades to these 5, 7 students. So I understand that this year is new and it's not something that we're super comfortable doing. There have been endless problems giving out written exams using this Zoom technology and WebEx and all these online programs. And I don't see a way to do this that is responsible as a professor. I want to make sure that the grades that I assign in the end, they have real meaning. And this year is my attempt at doing it. So I will open the floor here. There must be questions, concerns, and so on.
Professor, our first test is going to be sometime mid-October, end of October?
End of October, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that week where we will have the first test, there won't be any lectures that week. There's not going to be any homework that week. That week is reserved for these tests, and so we'll use the class time. But there will also, there's no way I can fit 20 students into 3 hours, and it's also 3 hours is a long time to do all exams on my end. So we will have to scatter them out over the week. So this is a real benefit of these tests. Like something like exam conflicts, it is much more flexible. If some of you are like, I can't make it work that day, I'm sick, can you something? It is a lot more flexible than it is with these written exams. So we will scatter them out over that week. I'll put up some time slots and hopefully it'll work for everybody. But often there's a student or two that has some special circumstance, so it won't work there. Then it's not a big deal because we can just find another slot where we can try to make this work. So there are 2 exams. Okay, so the first one is the one coming towards the end of the end of October, and the other one is the one that's going to come at the end of the semester. And so the first one obviously will only cover the first 6 weeks of class, and the second one is going to cover the entire material. I created a set of problems too for the second one. So there are two sets of problems sitting on Canvas. There's one for the discrete, the first half of the discrete course, and then there is one that covers everything. I should also say in all of this, by using the office hours and using the TA's office hours, this is a way for you to get some practice in using Zoom's technology to write and to express yourself. I can see there's a question out here about next Tuesday's schedule says is a change in designation. So we will be attending Monday classes. Okay, so I believe that is true. I believe that is true. And let me double check this with Anna. She's the one that has the schedule, and then I can let everybody know what to do. Are there any other questions about this way of doing all exams? This is something that takes a bit of practice, which is why we have 2 exams. Are there any other questions or comments about this? So again, I know this can be a bit intimidating, and we will try to build up to it. And a good way of getting started on this is to speak up. It does serve that purpose too. That doing these oral exams is something that will give you experience in how it is to speak out. And for some of you, and that includes myself, not being native, it can be a bit intimidating in the first place to speak in a language that's not your own. The way that I think that one could try to overcome it is to practice. So practicing in office hours and practicing reaching out during lectures. We will have time here. We haven't really got to start on the lectures yet, but we'll do some problems today, and then when there's something that is not clear to me, just interrupt, and then we'll go over it and have a discussion about it. Yeah. Okay. Let's get started on the material. This has been 40 minutes of me talking about rules and all this stuff. As we go on, I'm much more interested in actually trying to discuss the material than I am to discuss the rules and the like. So let's try to do some material that's on the agenda. So what is discrete time finance? Well, discrete time finance, it has to do with the way that the books are separated is that you either have continuous time or you have discrete time. Okay, so time can either move. So that's a determining factor. Either time moves continuously or it moves discretely. So for us, we have discrete time. Discrete time. What that means is that trading takes place at times, so let's say Tn, and these are time points, and there's a sequence of them. So you can start at 0, say, and you can go up to n, or you could do an infinite model. Right, so you will have your time point. So this here is a sequence. Right? So you have T0. This is very often equal to 0. This is less than T1. This is less than T2, and so on, all the way up to Tn. which is some finite time point. So if you're in the first one, you will have n plus 1 time points that you can trade. Right? So you can trade at time 0, you can trade at time t1, t2, and so forth, all the way up to time tn. And not that we're going to be using it in this course, but because it's coming in the next course, just contrast this with continuous time. So here you'll have trading. Here you have trading at time t, and then you'll have an interval, and there'll be a time interval, say up to t, or if you are running in the other one, maybe you're running up from 0 to infinity. So here there is a chunk of the real axis interval. So here you have discrete time points, maybe countable, if this one here is countable. Like it's countable because you can put this sequence here into a one-to-one correspondence with the natural numbers. Whereas if you're down here, these ones here, the uncountable. Right. There's a difference between the natural numbers and say the interval from 0 to 1. But there are a lot more time points in here than there are up here. So what we're going to be doing is discrete time. And it's kind of interesting, the history, the math finance history about discrete time versus continuous time. You will find statements like discrete time is easier than continuous time. So I don't believe that's true. So is discrete time? So please note, I'm saying easier. I'm not saying easy. I'm saying easier than continuous time. Well, it's a good question. So I believe no, but one should maybe look at history a little bit and get a sense of it. So undoubtedly so, the most famous model in continuous time is the Black-Scholes model. And this was done in 73. The binomial model over here this is done by Cox, Ross, and Rubenstein in 76. So you can see there is a difference. If it was really the case that discrete time was easier, then why is it coming years after the continuous time? I should contrast this even further by saying that even though Black-Scholes is the most important model that you're going to see, undoubtedly, there is a model that goes way back. The math finance, the world's math finance society is called the Bachelet Society. And so there's the word Bachelet in here. B-A-C-E-L-I-E-R, Bachelet Society. And Bachelet, he wrote his thesis was in 1900. So that was in 1900. The Black-Scholes formula came 73 years later. The difference between the Bachelier model and the Black-Scholes model is minuscule. It is very, very little. It is basically the difference between an exponential function and a linear function or an affine function. And you know, locally, I mean, Taylor's formula tells you that locally everything is affine, it's smooth. And so the Bachelier thesis was a continuous time model that was written in 1900. So way, way, way before the discrete time stuff came. This year was written on the about the Paris futures and forwards exchange rates in 1900. But Black-Scholes came much later, and the binomial model, Cox-Ross and Rubinstein, came even later. So the argument that obviously discrete time is easier than continuous time, I personally do not believe is correct. I don't believe this is correct at all. So why? What's the difference? Well, what's the difference? So, so continuous time, moving to continuous time, it washes out time step dependence. Okay, so what is that? Like, remember we had our T's? So very often when I'm looking at these Tn's, that's Tn less than Tn plus 1, like this is my, if I'm looking at the time step dependence, this will be my H, which is Tn plus 1 minus Tn. This is the same for all H, right? And so what H here measures is how frequently you can trade. And nowadays, this H here is minuscule. You can trade around the clock. Some products can be traded around the clock. And so what is this H parameter? And this H parameter is something that in discrete time you have. And it doesn't seem like you should have that in today's world because you can trade whenever you want. So that's one argument. So it washes out this time step dependence, and very often the formulas in continuous time, they are simpler than in discrete time. And so why is that? Well, so here's an example. If I look at an integral, so if you look at the Riemann integral, which I'm sure all of you have seen some version of, the Riemann integral, like what do I want to do? I have my function. This is my f. I want to integrate f of x over, say, some chunk a to b. Right, if I want to integrate this, okay, so now I'm looking at discretizing the x-axis, right? So I'll put in my h here. This here is my time step h. And now let's think about this area underneath the graph of f. How will I do it? Well, I could look at right-hand approximations. If I do that, I'm not very good at drawing these approximations, but let's give it a go. Right, so here I'm doing a very simple one with 3. Right, so I have the squares here. When I add up these 3 rectangles, so what am I looking at? I'm looking at summing f of, then I'm putting in my x ends, right? And then I'm multiplying onto the width of the rectangle, which is my h. So I have 1, 2, 3 here in the picture. And this is somehow approximating the interval down there. So this will be the discrete formula. This is the discrete formula. And if I'm looking at the continuous formula, well, I'll be integrating from a to b of f of x and dx. So we see here, just in this case, if I'm looking at the discrete Riemann integral, it's going to be a bunch of rectangles. Then I'll take a limit and I'll get the Riemann integral. And the Riemann integral typically is, it's not, this here can simplify tremendously compared to that sum we have up here. For example, if f is the exponential function, if I integrate the exponential function, I'm going to get a very nice integral down here. Whereas if I were to look at sums of exponentials here, this is quite complicated. So the continuous time limit simplifies. So the continuous time limit simplifies. So this here is arguing that the binomial model, at least historically, came later than the continuous time analog. The continuous time analog has this feature that that the formulas might be simple. So in this course here, we are not going to go and do the limits. We are going to be looking at these prelimits. We're going to be setting it up in discrete time. And there are some programs, there are some master programs that will not do that. You will just jump straight to the continuous time. There was a decision made here that our students should know the binomial model. And that sentiment I share. I do believe that our students should know the binomial model, because when you go and you'll have a discussion with somebody about quantitative finance, very likely the starting point of this discussion is going to be the binomial model. So you need to have that tool in your toolbox. So this is the reason, this is my reason for teaching the binomial model. It is simply that it's a tool that everybody with a quant finance degree should know, and should know how to operate. And it'll often be the starting point for whatever problem you're looking at. If you want to have a problem with randomness, the natural place to start very often is the binomial model. So this is what we'll be doing now here today, and continue with next week. Yeah, are there any questions so far? If not, let's have an example of a binomial model. See what it is. So the binomial model is very, very simple. We need randomness. So we're going to be looking at a one period binomial model. So there'll be 2 time points. So there'll be 2 time points. There'll be 2 time points. N equal to 0 and n equal to 1. There'll be one random variable. So a one period, this has to do with the 2 time points. So this one period has to do with these 2. The word binomial, this has to do with the next thing. This is going to be the random variable. So psi, this is a random variable. This is a random variable with values. There are two values, U and D. And to be more specific, one should, a more precise name is the multiplicative binomial model. And so why is it called multiplicative, right? So it's called binomial because there are two values. Right? There are two values here. My pen is dying, so I need a new pen. Let's try this one instead. So there are two values. Okay, so it's called a one-period model because there are two time points. It's called a binomial model because the random variable that we're working with can only take two values. Okay, so for example, if you were to say a multi-period binomial model, a multi-period or a three-period binomial model would have more than two periods, would have more than two time points. If you, instead of having a one-period binomial model, you would have a one-period trinomial model. Trinomial, well, that means that this random variable that we're going to be working with is going to take values not just in U and D, but there will be three values. That makes it a trinomial model. So that's where the words are coming from. And then I'm putting in here the word multiplicative. So where does the word multiplicative come in? Well, this is what you're going to see now. So we're going to have two securities. Two securities. So you're going to have a risky security. Right, this is what we're going to be calling for the stock. The stock, so it's going to have a price is 0 at time 0. And it's going to have price is 1. And this is where the word multiplicative comes in. S1 is going to be, well, what it was in the previous period, so that is 0, times this random variable psi. So the word multiplicative, it comes in from this equality sign. What it means is that the first period stock price was S0. And then you go to the next period, and how you get the next period stock price is you take the previous one and multiply it onto this random variable. This random variable is the thing that can take two values. Okay, so that's the risky security. There is another security floating around too. There's also a risk-free. So this is often called the bank. This is called the money market. Or the bond. So I don't like this. This is really, I don't like this. Calling this risk-free security for a bond, this is, my experience, is something that is going to add confusion, because at the very end of this course, we are going to be talking about something called fixed income. And fixed income also has bonds in it. And these bonds have nothing to do with the the money market and the risk-free security that we're talking about here. So if you read, depending on what resource you're reading, you might see people use the word bond for the risk-free security. I don't do that. The notation is that, so it has a price S0, but what to make the price of the risk-free security look different than the price of the stock, I'm going to put a 0 here. So it has this price at time 0, and it has a price S0 1, which is defined to be, so you'll see me use this notation here. This symbol, those of you that have done programming, you know it all too well. This here means definition. Right, so I'm defining the binomial stock price to be as given by the formula, and the same thing here. The formula is going to be a bit different. It's going to be called risk-free because there's no randomness here. This is the previous one times 1 plus R. Okay, where R is the risk-free interest rate. Okay, so this is the input to the binomial model. You will have two securities. The two securities you defined in terms of an interest rate. That's the money market account, and the other one, the stock, is defined in terms of this random variable psi, which can take on two values. It can take on U and D. So you see from this formula that S1 apparently can take on two values too. It can take on the value S0 times U and S0 times D. Whereas for the money market, well, there's only one value, namely 1 plus R. And this here is not random. Right? Yeah, we good so far? This here is all model input. Awesome. I created a poll, so maybe it's time to use this poll now. I have never launched a poll before. Let me see if I can do it. Polling. So I should say here with my polls, they're all anonymous. So whatever you reply, I will not be able to figure out. And trust me when I say even if I wanted to try to figure something like this out, I cannot figure it out. But there's a button inside Zoom that says, do you want these polls to be anonymous? And so these polls that I'm launching, they click that button that says, make it anonymous. Okay, so here's my first poll, and it's very simple. Can you follow? Then you can say yes, do it again, or do a problem. And so we're going to be using these polls, very simple structures. We're going to be using them just to see how the students are doing. This is something that we were not able to do when you have like chalkboard lectures. So there seems to be a split here. People can follow it, but it would not hurt to see a problem. And so I like that very much. I like that very much. So let's do a problem and then let's take a little break. Very good. Yeah, so I don't know if the results are available on your end, but it's split between yes and do a problem. So 6 people said we can follow, 7 students are saying do a problem, and that's great. So let's do a problem, and then let's take a little break. So the setup is we have these. So let's look at. So the poll results. So the setting is we have these a binomial model. It's apparently one period binomial model is apparently characterized by these parameters u and d up here, and then this r that we have sitting here. Okay, so let's try to write down a specific example of such a thing. So this is an example. So here we'll have the stock. The stock, we're going to say that it's going to start out at $4. Right, so this is my S0. And then we have this coin flip. I would keep calling it a coin flip. For me, coin flips, they don't have to be fair. It can be not 50-50. So I've said nothing about the probabilities of this random variable psi being u and the probability of it being d. But I'm going to call psi the outcome of a coin flip, even though the coin might not be a 50-50 coin. Okay, so we start out here, and then you flip the coin, and the coin is either going to be heads or tails. So there are 2 possible values, right? So you can go from S0, and you can go from $4 to $8. So that's not bad. This means this is my S1. This is my S1 in the up state. So this is S1 times U. Right, so you can see here U is equal to 2. And the other one is you go down, you're $4, and then if the coin flip is tails, you go downwards and you go down to 2. So this is S0 times D, so you can read from here that D is a half. Okay, so that's my stock model, and now I have my bank. So the bank is different. There's only one possible value in the future, so I start out with, say, $1. I want to buy a bank unit. I start out with $1, and then there's only one possibility. It's going to go up to 1.25. This here is my is 0 times 1 plus r. So it's quite generous interest rate. Apparently the interest is 25%. It's also 0.25. Right, so this is a specification of a one period binomial model. Okay, so let's think about, so what are the applications? So we have the model now. What do we want to use the model for? Well, what we're going to be using our model for, our application, for now at least, is derivative pricing. So there's a word in here, derivative. And other words for this, depending, these will be called claims. They'll be called contingency, contingent claims. Some people also just call them options. There are probably more words you can put in here. Derivative pricing. So this is not a derivative like in calculus, where you compute the derivative of f. This is f prime. It is some way of computing it. That's not that. This is also called a derivative, but it's not a derivative of a function. So let's look at some examples of these. Let's look at some examples of derivatives. The simplest one is arguably a forward. So a forward, it pays, a derivative is something that pays out a certain quantity, and it's typically a random payoff. It'll pay out k minus S1, or it'll pay out this at time 1. So k is a constant. S1 was the stock price at time 1, right? So there'll be two possible payoffs of the forward. The same thing, you can flip the payoff. You can have another forward. It pays out S1 minus k at time 1. So if you have to draw these payouts, sometimes that helps. If you're looking at a forwards payoff, if I have the stock price out here, then it'll be, well, depending on which one it is, if it's k minus S1, then when the stock price is near 0 is k in here, and then as the stock price grows, it's going to become a straight line. So it just cuts here with k. So this here is k minus x. Okay, so this is one derivative. It's called a derivative because its payoff, the derivative's payoff, depends upon what the stock price is. That's why it's called a derivative. A forward is a derivative because the forward's payoff, this difference here, depends upon the stock. Okay. Other popular derivatives will be options. So if you're looking at a put pays k minus S1, but now we take positive part up here. It's being paid out at time 1. So remember, this plus, what does that mean? If I take x plus, what is that defined to be? Well, it's equal to x if x is positive, and it's equal to 0 if x is negative. So if I were to draw the picture, let me draw it down here in the corner. If I were to draw the put payoff, so I have my x down here. And so when I get something, well, if the stock price is small, I'm going to get k minus something small. So this is k. I'll get k up here. And then I'll get this slope coming down. But you see, when I start becoming negative, I'm going to get a 0. And that's different than up here. So what I'm going to get is it will come sliding down to k. And then it'll stay here. So this here is my puts payoff function. This is k minus x plus. The next one we should do is the call. The call pays, what will be S1 minus k positive part. This is at time 1. So we have a put option, we have a call option, and the call looks like, what does it look like? Well, if the stock price is close to 0, I get minus k, presumably k is positive, so I'll have a 0 here, and then it'll run out when I get the underlying to be the stock itself. Well, then I'm going to get k minus k, so when the underlying is k itself, I'll get 0 here, and then it'll come up as a straight line. This here is x minus k positive part. So this one here is the put. This is the puts payoff. This one here is the calls payoff. And these things here are called hockey sticks. They look a bit like a hockey stick. So we have, this is the payoff. This one here is the forward. And these ones here are the two options. And so of course, in general, a general derivative, a general derivative is given by a function. So if from R to R, a general derivative is given as is given by a function, and the payoff, the corresponding payoff at time 1, this is f of s1. So when one speaks of a derivative, what you're talking about is this function. And it's those functions that we have seen a couple of examples of here. This function f here, this could be this hockey stick, or it could be this hockey stick here, or it could be something else. Whatever function you choose, and that's going to be defining your derivative. Okay, so I think it's time to take a break. What we're going to be doing, starting around 10 o'clock, is computing prices of these derivatives. Right? That's our main application. This is derivative pricing. We want to figure out, given you have this model, what's the price of an option, what's the price of a call or put, forward, so on. Okay, so I say take 10-minute break. So remember again, I'm gonna switch sessions, so there's gonna be a different Zoom session here. This is just to make sure that I don't exceed this limit megabyte capacity that Canvas and Zoom have. So, are there any questions before we take a little break?
I have some questions.
Yes.
My screen is not very good, and it stopped in the at the moment you read the two securities. So could you so when and how can I see the class record?
I mean, so when we're done with this, I will put the lecture recordings up on Canvas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to take for the computer to have these files and upload them. This is taking a while, but yeah. So the lectures and the document slides and all this is going to be put up on Canvas. And there's a question about Sakai. So we're not using Sakai. And the reason we're not using Sakai is because Zoom has been built into Canvas. And as far as I know, it has not been built into Sakai. So we have been asked to stop using Sakai, and we're going to be using Canvas. So if you do not have access to Canvas for whatever reason, you need to let me know so I can give you access. Okay, let's take 10-minute break, switch over on a different Zoom link, and then we get started back up.